So welcome to the Just Keep Swimming session with Heather. She will be along shortly. Please, can we ask you to remain on mute unless you are invited to unmute yourselves. There will potentially be an opportunity later on, so please remain on mute until there. There will also be time for questions and answers towards the end, and Heather will talk a little bit more about that. Hope you enjoy it, and over to you, Heather.
Thank you so much. So hello, everyone. It's nice to see so many smiling faces, especially here in the US. It's a little early for us all, or at least for me. So I appreciate you coming back. I'm also glad to see some returning faces that I saw yesterday at my Mind Matters session. Those of you who attended or watched that are going to be a little extra briefed for this session because it follows a very similar format. But if you haven't, or you are seeing me for the first time right now, that's completely okay too. There's nothing to catch up on. And you did not need to bring any sort of goggles, towels, water wings, or otherwise to this session. So if you did bring any of that swimming gear, feel free to set it to the side. We're not going to be jumping into the pool, or certainly not into a literal pool, maybe a metaphorical pool. We'll see how that goes. But I'm going to go ahead and bring up my slides for you all and give you a moment to adjust your screen views and give me a moment to adjust my screen view as well. And if you could, if you're able to see my slides full screen, could you give me a thumbs up? I just want to make sure they look good. Great, thank you so much. So welcome to Just Keep Swimming, Performing Under Pressure. Performing under pressure is what we are going to talk about in this session. And the meaning of Just Keep Swimming will become clear in time. My name is Heather Hurley, and in case you came into this expecting actual swimming, let me give you a little bit of an overview about this session so you know what to expect. I'm a firm believer that happiness is met expectations. So in this session, you can expect presentation. I'm going to be doing a lot of talking. I'm going to explain a number of techniques to help you reduce nerves. This session is really about what to do in the moment, or even in the days or weeks leading up to a performance. When you start thinking about that performance and maybe the heart starts beating a little faster, maybe the breaths start going a little faster, your body's responses start kicking in. And my goal is to give you a lot of options, techniques, tools that you'll have at the ready so that when those bodily or mental responses start happening, you can harness them and make them work for you and make them take your performance and put it over the top instead of making that performance stumble, okay? So there's definitely going to be quite a bit of presentation, but it's not just going to be me participating in this session. It's going to be you participating in this session too. We're going to try a couple of these things together. So we are going to demonstrate or work on some of these. I'm hopeful that that will help maybe solidify some of the concepts a little bit for you all. And I'm going to say quite a few times throughout this session that if some of these things don't make sense to you or aren't going to work for you, that's completely fine. The ones that we do together in this session might not work for you. That's okay. I do appreciate participation and encourage you to give it a try, see what happens. We're all friends here. Okay. As Julia mentioned, there is going to be time for Q&A at the end. If you have questions throughout, please feel free to type those in the chat. We've got music team folks monitoring the chat, keeping track of all of those questions. If you'd prefer to ask the question verbally, we should have time at the end for that. So I'm here to answer questions and take your observations about performing under pressure or about metaphorical swimming. So please feel free to share those as they come up. All right. So that's what you can expect in this session. Let me also just give you quickly a little bit about me and why I am here presenting to you on performing under pressure. As many of you know, or all of you know, I'm a member of the Collective Music Team. That's the way in which I encounter many of you in sessions or in things related to the Collective. I love it. I'm glad that they've accepted me. They had me onto the music team so far. I am also, in my real musical life, a singer in the Library of Congress Chorale. I live in the Washington, D.C. area on the East Coast of the U.S., and I sing with a few employees and alumni of the Library of Congress here in DC, and I love that as well. I think we all know we love our in real life singing groups as much as we love the Collective. When thinking of performing under pressure, I'm also a game show veteran. I've been on a number of national television and radio shows, many of them quiz related, and so I am often on these shows called to perform under a time constraint while lots of people are watching and there are unnatural things around me and lights and cameras and all of that. And my material in this session is largely pulled from things that I do or that I have learned to do in order to make those performances go a little bit better. But of course, game shows are just one kind of performance. You all know that music is another type of performance, sports, right? There are all sorts of different performances that we do on stages or even in our daily lives. And that's what this session is about, getting ready for all of those different performances, okay? So those are the experiences that I am bringing to bear as I talk to you today. But I should also mention that, unlike all of those experiences, one thing that I am not is a doctor. So this is not medical advice that I'm giving you. I haven't studied the brain or the nervous system from a scientific perspective. So these are really just my ideas and suggestions and things that have helped me. So please don't consider it any sort of medical advice. I'm certainly not a good person to ask for medical advice about anything. All right. So please, throughout this session, also remember, as I mentioned earlier, things are going to work differently for everyone, right? Everyone prepares for a performance differently. Everyone's body responds to the thought of a performance differently. What I am presenting to you are some tips, some techniques, some ideas to calm that brain, to harness those nerves, to use those things to your advantage. But your brain and your nerves work differently from mine. And so, for all of these things that I'm going to talk about, your mileage may vary, and that's okay. Don't get frustrated if some of these things make no sense to you. My goal in speaking to a wide group is to give lots of options, lots of tools that you'll have in the toolkit so that when performance time comes, you've got some options to try out. And my aim is if even just one or two of these comes in handy for you in the future, that's great. Okay, so let's get started. Without further ado, you know I love a numbered list, so I've numbered my list with technique number 1 to start, focused breathing. Okay, and I've given an example to start out with a very simple type of focused breathing, the old in through the nose, out through the mouth. You know, out through the mouth, and I'm going to move my microphone so I don't blast you, but the out through the mouth is a very purposeful, right? You've moved the lips, you're really pushing the air out. You are, when you're focused breathing, focusing on the breathing, right? You're not focusing on, there's a lot of people in that audience. I don't know measure 67 as well as I should. My voice isn't feeling as great as it did yesterday. You don't worry about any of those things when you're doing focused breathing. And I might add that focused breathing is helpful even when there's no performance on the horizon. When you're encountering a stressful situation in your everyday life, do a little bit of focused breathing, whether it's in through the nose, out through the mouth, or another type of focused breathing. Take a beat to center yourself and think only on breathing in that moment and not whatever that other thing is that's stressing you out. Okay. Now, focused breathing comes in a number of different forms. One particular one that I have found very helpful in getting ready for performances is something called 4-7-8 breathing. Okay. There's a little bit of math in this one, and this is one I'm going to ask us to try together, but let me explain it first. 4-7-8 breathing involves inhaling for 4 seconds, holding your breath for 7 seconds, and exhaling for 8 seconds, okay? So what you're doing here on that, particularly on that exhale, is it's an extended exhale. So you're not just whooshing all of the air out at once. You are slowly letting that air trickle out. And again, you're remaining in the moment, thinking about your breath, okay? And I know sometimes even in our collective warm-ups, we do some breathing warm-ups, right? Because it's just such a critical system to make our bodies function, to make us perform our best, to make us sing our best. So I'd like us to go ahead and do a little bit of focused breathing. For some of you, it's the afternoon. For me, it's the morning. Always a good time of day to take a moment to just breathe. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and count out the beats, okay, of when I want you to inhale, to hold it, and to exhale. And we'll do just a couple of cycles of that focused breathing with the 4-7-8 technique. All right, so here we go. Ready? In, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Again. In, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, and we'll stop it there after just a couple of rounds. So perhaps you feel a little more refreshed and a little more centered, but that gives you an idea of how 4, 7, 8 breathing works. Again, just another option to have in your toolkit, another option when you're having a stressful situation or getting ready for a stressful performance. And really, in this session, I should have mentioned earlier, I've tried to order these techniques in such a way that the ones I talk about first are the ones that you would use when the performance is on the horizon, when it's still a little bit away, or there's no performance on the horizon. And then towards the end of the session, I'm going to talk more about techniques that you can use right in the moments before the performance. When the performance is here, it's go time, what you might find to be helpful in that immediate sort of stage fright, butterflies in the stomach sort of a thing situation. Okay? All right, so 4, 7, 8 breathing. Thank you all for humoring me there. You now know how it works. I'll explain, we won't demonstrate, but I'll explain just one more similar type of focused breathing, and that's called box or square breathing. I've got a visualization of it here, and as you can see, the counting on this one is that you breathe in for 4, you hold for 4, you breathe out for 4, and then you hold for 4 again, and you just do that as many cycles as you need. And it's called box or square breathing because if you drew it out, as you can see, it looks a little bit like a box. So those are 3 types of focused breathing, and thinking about box or square breathing in particular, you don't just need to take my word for it on this one. Let me give you the first of our examples of famous performers or other types of people who have used some of these techniques. I'd like to show you a picture here of Mark Devine, who's a former commander of the U.S. Navy SEALs. For the non-Americans, the Navy SEALs are one of our military special operations forces, so they do the most daring of rescues, the dangerous things, the most high-pressure, high-stakes operations. Those are the kinds of things we send our Navy SEALs to. And Mark Devine, in his book called The Way of the SEAL, talked about box breathing. And let me read you what he said. He said, "Box breathing allowed me to perform exceedingly well in the SEALs. It was instrumental in saving my life several times in crises. I was able to remain calm and focus clearly to avoid reactionary thinking or worse, panic." Okay. Now, I'm certainly not doing any performances with as high of stakes as a Navy SEAL would, but I think that we can take encouragement from the idea that if a Navy SEAL, who is often literally in a life or death situation, can use focused breathing to remain calm, to avoid that panic, to avoid that stage fright, to avoid the deer in the headlights situation, then certainly in our performances on the stage or on the athletic field or at the podium, we could use focused breathing also to remain calm and to do our best. All right, so that's technique number 1, focused breathing. Let's move on to another. Technique number 2 is visualization. See the performance that you want to put into the world, all right? I'll use myself as an example on this one. So here's a picture of me on one of my game shows. This was a game show called Mental Samurai that involved being strapped into this odd contraption and kind of moved about while being asked trivia questions. And you can't really tell from the picture, but I'm actually lying on my back facing up towards the ceiling. So it's very uncomfortable and awkward and nerve-wracking, as you can imagine. But using the visualization technique, seeing yourself performing well, gets you to the point, hopefully, where, if I can quote myself for a moment, you say to yourself, "I know I can do it." Okay? You imagine yourself doing the performance well so many times that by the time performance day actually arrives, you've seen 1,000 successful performances of your song or your speech or your game. Okay? Positive visualization, telling yourself, "I can do it. I know I've done it. I've already seen myself doing it." Okay? An example from the world of sports, visualization is quite popular in sports. Let's talk about Michael Phelps. Hey, swimming. All right, Michael Phelps, Olympic gold medalist many times over, very successful, very celebrated swimmer. You would think if anyone can just jump in the pool and perform well, it would be Michael Phelps. But he has talked talked about the fact that he uses visualization too. He uses it in a couple of ways. Let me tell you what Michael Phelps said. He says, "There are times in my sleep when I literally dream my race from start to finish. Other nights, when I'm about to fall asleep, I visualize to the point that I know exactly what I want to do. Dive, glide, stroke, flip, reach the wall, hit the split time to the hundredth, then swim back again for as many times as I need to finish the race. It's pretty vivid the first time I do it, but eventually it puts me to sleep as if I'm counting sheep." All right. Michael Phelps gets so familiar with his visualizations of him doing that swimming performance exactly how he wants it that it's become so normal and a part of his normal thought process that it literally puts him to sleep. Okay. So, in your visualizations of your performance, imagine yourself driving to the venue, parking the car, walking into the building, waiting in the green room, lining up backstage, walking onto the risers, opening your music, looking at the conductor, going through the first song, going through the, right, all of those little details, just like in Michael Phelps, where he thinks about going into the water, turning at the wall, all of those little bits and pieces. Take a moment, a few weeks or a few days before that performance, and imagine all of those little pieces happening successfully to result in a great performance, so that by the time you're doing them for real, it's like you've already been there before. All right. So that's visualization and another way to see yourself doing that performance. Okay. Now, there's a saying that says, hope for the best, prepare for the worst. Let's talk about planning for the worst. I think that this is an interesting and perhaps amusing way to make yourself realize that the worst case scenario is not going to happen. Okay. I've got an image here that says, go outside. Worst case scenario, bears. Okay. Now, when you step out of your door, out of your house, out of your wherever you live, there's probably very little chance that you're going to encounter a bear. But technically, it's possible. And I think when we're thinking about performances, those of us with overactive imaginations think about many, many, many things that are never going to happen or are very unlikely to happen. And it's not just you and me that does this. Let's talk about another famous person as an example. Taylor Swift, right? Successful musician, you know, what would she have to worry about? Well, I found a quote that when Taylor Swift is thinking about a performance, she tells herself, they're not going to throw things at you. It's going to be okay. Even someone as successful and as practiced as Taylor Swift has this moment of thinking, are they going to throw things at me? And I'm sure if anything that anyone is throwing at Taylor Swift is wonderful because they love her. But in our performances, we're also thinking about, what if they don't like me? What if this happens? What if that happens? And you know what? If you're going to do that, well, then let's really do it. Okay. So let me give you a scenario and let's try working on this one and see if we can get all of these worst case scenarios out of the way in advance. Okay. So here's the scenario that I'd like to present to you. Imagine that your singing group is about to perform 4 songs at this beach restaurant. Okay. And here we've got a lovely picture of some tables on a sandy beach. We're right on the water. There's candles. The tables are set with beautiful dinnerware. It looks like it might be sunset wherever this is. We've got a lovely rocky cliff to one side. So in this picture, you've got an idea of kind of this is the scene. Okay, imagine yourself and your group, your singing group, or just yourself about to go to these people that are going to be coming into this restaurant performing some songs. Okay, and I would like you to think about, what's the worst that could happen? When I do this technique for my performances, one of my favorites is bears, which is why I had that picture a few slides ago. I also tell myself, you know what, Heather? Alien invasion. The aliens could absolutely choose that day, that time of the performance to make first contact. And that would really ruin the flow of my song, or that would really ruin my appearance on that game show. Okay, so you've got the juices flowing. This is one of those points where I'm going to invite you to, if you're able, use that Zoom feature to raise your hand, or if you want to go ahead and come off mute and tell me or give me some suggestions of, if you're thinking of the worst case scenario at this beach restaurant, what would it be? Karen,
It would be a rock fall
I
on
wondered.
yes, on us all, squished.
I wondered if someone would say that. When I saw that rocky cliff, I thought, oh boy, what if there's an avalanche, even though there's never been an avalanche recorded in history at this location? Thank you, Karen. That's a great one to get us started. Dino.
I don't know that fence looks a little bit flimsy. I just might fall off.
Yep, definitely falls of any kind. Certainly falls into the fence, falls into the water. That's a good one too. Michael Rowe. Unmute.
Sorry, I was up with my mum. I was thinking like of a sudden storm and literally like a giant kind of wave, almost like a tsunami, kind of like descending on everybody out of nowhere, basically.
Absolutely. It looked very calm and serene water at that moment, but definitely random tsunami, sudden tsunami. That's a good one too. Thank you, Michael. Julie Lee.
Yeah, mine was the same, tsunami.
Yeah, and you know what, folks? We could have two tsunamis. That is absolutely, probably mathematically possible. So double tsunami, got it. Roz Bremner.
An asteroid.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Along with the aliens, also an asteroid. Yeah, right landing, how conveniently, of all the places on Earth for an asteroid, right at our beach location. That's a good one. Thank you, Roz. Marilyn.
The group, most of the group gets run over by a bus in the parking lot, and I have to be the only one singing on my part.
Yeah, see, it's not just the bus running the group over, it's the fact that you're still there, so you've got to carry on the performance, and that's not what was supposed to happen. That I like that one. Thank you, Marilyn. Susan Talbot.
What's the first word? That's always my fear. Huh? What song? What word? Huh?
Yep. Total blank when you're going to perform the song or the speech or the whatever. That's a good one. Thank you, Susan. Julia Sweeney.
I'd fall over one of the candles and set everything on fire.
Yep. You sense that I mentioned the candles for a reason, and that is correct. Anytime I see live flame in a performance venue, I tell myself, Heather, you're just going to somehow catch a sleeve or a something in a candle, and it's all going to go whoosh. Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Julia. John Price.
Yeah, I was just thinking a problem with the food might make half the audience very sick.
That's a good one. Performing in restaurants, always dicey when there's food involved. So thank you, John. That's a great one. I see Carol has her hand up too. Carol?
Yeah, what if the people that are there really don't take the time to listen to what we're doing? That's very upsetting to me. It sets me off a lot of times.
Yes, as someone who admits to being a very avid, passionate eater, it is hard when I am asked to listen to a speaker or watch a performer when there's also a plate of food in front of me. So when I am the speaker or performer and there is food in front of my audience, I think, well, I'm already coming in second to the roast beef. Fabulous. All right, that was a good one, Carol. I'm looking at my screens to see if there are any other hands up. Rita.
Just speaking on behalf of Angela Garrett, something I would fear, nobody turns up.
Yep, that picture had no tables. And any of you who have been at a performance venue where, you haven't gotten any ticket sale information, it's just people are going to show up or not show up. There's always that worry of, we're ready, but is anyone going to come to my party? So that's sometimes how we feel getting ready for collective rehearsals. We've opened the room, there's nobody here. So yes, we all know those sorts of feelings. All right, and I'm mindful of the time, so I'm going to cut it off there. Thank you all for sharing those wonderful examples of the worst that could happen. And I think you realize, or I hope you realize, that for the vast majority of those things, or potentially almost all of them, it's not going to happen, right? There's not going to be bears or asteroids or tsunamis or any of these things that set the restaurant on fire or cover it in water, any of these things, right? Our brains tend to go to the worst case scenario, but it hardly ever happens. And if, on the odd chance, there is something from the worst case scenario playbook that occurs, well, you've already thought about it, right? But remember, The worst case scenario is really, really mathematically very rare and very unlikely. So don't focus on it. Don't worry about that. Instead, focus on visualizing a positive performance. And another technique, moving on down our list, that can help you with visualizing that positive performance is to think of it as a challenge rather than a threat. Okay? What do I mean by that? Let me give you some examples with language, making it a little bit more concrete. So if you're thinking of something as a challenge, you would tell yourself, this is my time to shine. I know I can do it. Remember our visualization? I know I can do it. This is my opportunity to show them what I got. You would say things like, I can do this. I got it. I'm ready to go. Let me at them. Let me show them what I got. If you're thinking of something as a challenge, you're being assertive. You're saying, let's go. It's go time. It's show time. Let's do this. Okay. You're getting pumped up because you want to prove yourself and so show that you're up to the challenge. With a challenge, if something happens and you make a mistake, you learn from it. It's not the end of the world. If you forget a word or mess something up, that's okay. The audience probably isn't even going to notice. And if you have to perform this song or speech again, you'll know that that's an area you need a little extra practice on. Not a big deal. Also with a challenge, you're taking advantage of something called eustress, eustress. EU is a prefix meaning good, and it's that sort of positive, anticipatory, nervous energy, right, that is going to help propel you forward in your performance. It's your body's natural reaction saying, hey, we want to make you prepared by giving you extra oxygen, and that's why your breath goes a little faster. We want to make sure the blood is pumping all through your body, and that's why your heart is going. Okay, that's your body's way. That eustress is your body's way of getting you ready. Okay, that's how you think of something, a performance, as a challenge. Now, on the other hand, if you're thinking of it as a threat, well, when you're thinking of something as a threat, what do? You're trying to limit the damage. Let's just get through it. Let's just not make a mistake, right? That's not what we want. That's not how we want to approach our performances. We don't want to say, I'm outmatched. I can't do this. Why am I even here? What am I doing? Who do I think I am? Right? Don't do that. Don't do that. When you're thinking of something as a threat, you're trying to avoid it. I don't want to go out there. Nobody look at me. Do I have to do this? Can I just go home? When you see a threat, you try to get away from it. And with our performances, we want to go towards them, right? We want to embrace them. When you're in a threat situation, you're defeated by mistakes, right? You see the bear eats you, that's the end of the game. But in a performance situation, if a mistake happens, don't get defeated by it, move past it, power past it, learn from it, okay? And finally, with a threat, you are not using eustress, you are distress, the bad kind of stress. You're letting all of your body's mechanisms and the stress defeat you, okay? So don't think of a performance as a threat. As much as you can, instead, frame it as a challenge, as an opportunity for you to do your best, okay? So that's technique number 4, making it a challenge, all right? Technique number 5 is, I call, prepare in your own way. And this is my reminder to the room, and those of you who attended Dr. Susan Campbell's session will remember that there are introverts and extroverts among us, okay? Let me bring up a picture to maybe make this a little more concrete. So I've got a picture here of people in an office setting. To the left side of the picture, we've got a group of people talking together, and then to the right of the picture, we've got one person on their own, okay? Now, the extroverts among us, like the people to the left, before a performance situation or in any kind of social situation, get energy from other people, right? So they are the ones before the performance who are backstage chit-chatting in groups. These people you can see are standing very close together. They might be looking at things on their phone. They're talking to each other. They're having a great time. That's how they get energized as extroverts, and that's how they pump themselves up for a performance. On the other hand, introverts, perhaps like this gentleman to the right side of the picture, get energy from being on their own, from getting into their own zone, okay? In this picture, he's looking at his phone. Introverts might prefer to be in a place that's quiet. They maybe don't want to talk to other people. They prepare for a performance by just kind of focusing inward. That's how they get their energy, okay? I am an introvert. So those of you with keen Zoom eyes will notice that at the beginning of this session, I was not on camera. I was getting in my zone, okay? So I turned the camera off, I muted myself, and I just kind of took a moment to collect myself and to focus inward as I got ready for this performance for you all, okay? Introverts might want to be by themselves before a performance. When I was most recently filming something for television, I took a magazine to the green room and I read that magazine cover to cover 3 times because I didn't want people to try to talk to me. I find meeting new people and chatting with relative strangers very, very stressful. And I knew that in order to have my best performance, I needed to get ready by just kind of being in my zone. And maybe I looked a little antisocial and that's unfortunate, but I knew that I needed to do my best by preparing in my own way. Now, neither of these ways is right or wrong. They're just different. And so I would encourage you both to be aware of your own preference when it comes to introversion versus extroversion, and also be aware of the preferences of others, right? Just because other people are chatting doesn't mean that you have to, and just because you are chatting doesn't mean that other people have to. Just be mindful that some people like to prepare for a performance by chatting, and some people like to prepare for a performance by being in their zone, or maybe people like to do a little bit of each, and that's okay. Just be mindful that everyone gets into their zone a little bit differently. All right, so technique number 5 is my reminder to you of introversion versus extroversion. Okay, so as we start thinking about techniques that are useful in the short time leading up to a performance, the hours or even minutes leading up to a performance, a technique that I have found helpful is something called staying in the present, okay? Staying in the present means focusing only on what is happening right now and not letting yourself get distracted by what is about to happen or what might happen. So when you are in the green room, in the speaker's lounge, in the locker room, backstage, lined up, what do you do to calm the nerves? Well, let's think of an example on this one. So I've got here a picture of a big staircase. And if you looked at this big staircase, at climbing this staircase as your performance, it might be easy to get overwhelmed and look at that thing and say, that's like 60 stairs. I can't climb that. Look at me. Okay? And you're starting already to see it as a threat and wanting to avoid it. But if you see it as a challenge, first technique, and then also focus in what is happening right now, we are going to follow the advice of that saying, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, by just saying things like, right now I am. So with this staircase, you'd say, right now I am climbing the first step, and you would climb it. Then you say, right now I am climbing another step, and you would climb it. And you would take that long staircase one step at a time, instead of letting your brain be overwhelmed by the entirety of the whole staircase that you have to climb, okay? In a performance situation, same kind of idea. Instead of saying, I'm about to be on a game show in front of millions of people, or I'm about to sing in front of a crowd of 20 people, don't get overwhelmed by the enormity of it. Instead, say things like, right now, I am standing backstage. Right now, we are walking onto the risers. Right now, I am in my place on the risers. Right now, I am opening my music. Okay, you get the idea. You are taking it just one step at a time. You are staying in the moment, in the present, and letting your mind just focus on that one thing that is happening right now, rather than getting overwhelmed by everything else, okay? So I encourage you, especially right before a performance, to just take one step at a time, literally in the case of climbing a staircase, but also metaphorically as you get ready for your concert or your speech or whatever performance it is that you're doing. Remember the words, right now I am, okay? That's technique number 6. Technique number 7, and we just have a few more to go, so I appreciate everyone's patience. Technique number 7 is called tune the senses. That's my name for focusing, while you're thinking of being in the moment, on what you are seeing, what you are hearing, what you're smelling, what you're tasting, what you're touching. Now, not all of these are going to apply in every performance scenario, but get the idea that when you are just being in the present, it can help add texture to what you are doing as you focus in the present to just say, all right, right now I am waiting backstage. I hear the other people talking. I can see the door that I'm going to walk through. Okay. Again, just giving your brain little things to focus on so that it doesn't get overwhelmed. Let's use this one a little bit, see if we can figure out in our beach scenario. Remember the beach scenario? Now, don't think about the worst case stuff. We've put that to the side. But let's think back to that scenario where we were going to perform at this beach restaurant, okay? And using that tuning the senses technique, I want you to imagine what you might be sensing as you prepare for this performance. What might you be hearing or seeing or smelling, okay? So in that beach scenario, tune the senses. And is anyone willing to raise their Zoom hand or come off mute and tell me, what do you hear or see? What are you sensing? Rach.
First thing that hits me is just the waves breaking on the rocks just to the side of you, because that to me is a massively calming thing. It always helps me go to sleep. Obviously, you wouldn't want to go to sleep in this situation, but it would certainly help me calm.
Yeah, that's a great one. And that's absolutely a sort of
as well.
Yeah, a twofer. It gets you a little bit zen, it gets you a little bit relaxed, but also absolutely something you would see in that scene. So thank you, Rachel. Michael Rowe.
Rachel, you picked my idea, so I know how it feels now. What I was going to so the second thing that would come to mind would be like the warmth of the sun and maybe like the wind, if there's a breeze coming off of the sea.
Yeah, I think definitely near the water of any size, lakes, ponds, whatever, definitely off the ocean, there's going to be some breezes. So that's a great one too. Thank you, Michael. Roz.
The smell of the salt. Especially, like, obviously that looks like sea to me, so smell of salt.
Yeah, that's a good one. And I find those smell memories are often very strong. So anyone, if you've been to the sea, you can smell that salty air, but definitely that's something you'd encounter there. Thank you, Roz. Marilyn.
I would be smelling the food of the restaurant and all the people eating it.
Yes, I think that's very realistic to expect at a restaurant. And as discussed before, I might find that very distracting and want some of that for myself. But definitely that adds to the realism of the image that you are going to probably, if you're performing in a restaurant, be smelling some food. Definitely. Thank you, Marilyn. Dino.
Yeah, I'd be hearing a lot of sort of chit chat, small talk, hushed whispers, that sort of thing.
Yeah, anyone who's been backstage at a venue before a performance, you hear the audience going, right? Yeah, they're just getting ready. They're excited, just like we are, to hear that performance. So that's definitely a good one too. And remember, they're not saying, oh, this is going to be terrible. They're probably saying, I'm so excited. This is going to be great. So that audience chat is a good one. Thank you, Dino. Julie.
I'd be looking at the flames of the candles flickering.
That's a good one to see. Definitely our eyes, when we were looking at that picture, were probably drawn to those candles. So that's definitely something you are seeing with your seeing sense. Thank you, Julie. Mike.
For me, it was just the conflict between the cool breeze on the one hand and the potential warmth of that sun there bursting through right there on that corner of the rock. Just depends how that is at the time in the actual situation.
Maybe a little bit of both, honestly. If you've been outside on a day where there's clouds going by, sometimes it's dark and a little chilly, and then you get a bit of sun and it warms up and it's bright. But those are both definitely possibilities. And the contrast between the two, something to be aware of to add realism to the image. Anybody else? I'm just scrolling through my pictures. All right, those were all wonderful. Thank you all for sharing those. Definitely adding texture to what you might be seeing or hearing or smelling right in that moment. And I would encourage you, thinking back to when we were talking about visualizations, to also, when you visualize, tune the senses as well. Think about, what am I going to see? What am I going to hear? What am I going to smell? Right? When I was looking up examples of famous people, I saw an example from Conor McGregor, who is a fighter, where he talked about in his visualizations, he would imagine what the arena would smell like, what the crowd would sound like. He would do that 1,000 times so that when fight night actually arrived, he knew, was ready for all of what was about to happen because he had visualized it using all of that sense information to just get him ready that extra little bit. Okay, so technique number 7, tune the senses. Think about what you are going to see and hear and all of that. All right. Technique number 8, and the next two kind of go together. So I've labeled it, numbered it, it's 8A. That's not even a real number, but that's what it is. And I call it mantra, mantra, mantra. What is a mantra? A mantra is a word or a phrase often used in meditation to just center yourself. We continue with this idea of centering yourself in the moments before a performance. Okay. Now, what is the right mantra? Well, whatever it is for you. It differs for everybody. Some people use the syllable Om. You might use a word that you can just say over and over, or a phrase that you can say over and over and over. And it doesn't even need to make sense. Banana, 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 banana. Whatever it is, it's something that you can do without too much concentration, but with just enough concentration that your brain doesn't start going crazy thinking about the performance to come. And here, finally, we get to the reason this session is titled Just Keep Swimming. This is a picture from the movie Finding Nemo. The character on the left, the blue fish, is named Dory. And throughout the movie, you may remember, if you have seen it, Dory would say, just keep swimming, just keep swimming, just keep swimming. Okay? That is my mantra. That's what I use before performances. So when I had my camera off a few minutes ago when we started the session, I was telling myself right here, just keep swimming, just keep swimming. That's why I was muted, because you all didn't need to hear that. It would have spoiled the surprise. But when I'm in a game show situation, when I'm about to go on a stage, if you see me mouthing just keep swimming, you know what that is about. And I encourage you to think about, what is your word or phrase or nonsense gibberish that you can just say over and over and over and over, so that in the moment you can think about the mantra and not about the other things that are maybe going to make you nervous, right? You can just get into your zone by repeating that mantra over and over and over, okay? Now, along the lines of a mantra, if you want to expand a little further from just a repeated word or a phrase and have the ability to give yourself a pep talk, I encourage you to do so. I struggle with this one a little bit because I'm just not as clear of mind in the moments before a performance. But the day of a performance, when I wake up, I'll often try to get myself in front of a mirror, give myself some straight talk about, Heather, it's going to be a good performance. It's going to be great, okay? Now, famous people do this too, even though, again, you wouldn't think that they would need it. But let me bring up one more example of Lorde, who is, I believe, from New Zealand, a very successful musician. She gives herself a pep talk before her performances, okay? I found a quote where she says that she tells herself, you'll be in your zone, the lights will be on, and people will be cheering, and you know it'll be okay. Okay, that is a little bit of Lorde's pep talk to herself. So hopefully you get the idea from this that on performance day or in the moments before a performance, tell yourself, be your own best fan. I know this is going to be a great performance. And thinking about the techniques that we've learned in this session, tell yourself, I visualized it 1,000 times. I've already thought about the worst, and I know it's probably not going to happen. I'm thinking of this performance as a challenge and an opportunity for me to show my stuff. I've prepared in my own way, whether it's chatting with other people or being on my own. I've tuned the senses and imagined right now I am in the present, and here is what I am seeing and hearing and smelling. I'm repeating my mantra. I'm giving myself the pep talk. This is going to be a wonderful performance because I've applied the techniques. I'm ready to go. I've practiced. I've prepared. And now it's showtime. Okay? So I encourage you to give yourself a pep talk. I encourage you to use any of these techniques that are helpful to you. Some of them them maybe in the weeks before a performance, some of them in the moments before a performance, some of them when there's no performance at all to come, but something is giving you a little bit of stress. The whole point again here was to give you lots of options so that when you have a performance or a stressful situation, you can find a way to make the nerves and make the stress work for you and help you rather than hinder you. Okay, so that's my pre-prepared list of techniques. We have a little bit of time now for questions, so I'm going to stop sharing and throw it to Julia to take us to Q&A.
Okay, any questions from the chat, from our chat monitors at all? There
are a couple, yes. I'm sorry. Was there someone else already speaking? Please carry on.
No, I was just saying, Mike, just if there was anything in the chat as the session was going on.
Yeah, there was a couple of things actually. Early on in the chat, a question from Karen Penketh was, she said, "I wonder why we always hold the breath before the exhalation." Would you like to care to comment on that, Heather?
Yeah, I can, and again, not a doctor, but I think from what I understand that there's actually in the holding of the breath and really in the whole focused patterned breathing, there's a little bit of a psychosomatic response, which is a very fancy technical word for your body, your nervous system, even your subconscious bodily systems respond to that very distinct pattern. So you've got sort of unconscious regular breathing that's just in, out, in, out, in, out. But when we start doing something a little different, something a little funky with our breathing, our body actually responds to that. And the holding of the breath just helps, I think, things, and again, this is not technical words, but sort of center and calm down and focus and get into line. So, and there are different ways of doing that, different numbers, whether you're holding for 4 or 7 or whatever, just to try to get that body to focus.
Cool.
Good question.
Okay, we've got a question.
Sorry, carry on, please, carry on.
Was there another question, Mike? I was going to say there was Carol Gass has got her hand up, if not.
Excellent, let's take Carol and Judy.
So I've done all these preparations and the ones that work for me, or I think will work for me. And I get on stage and I start singing and I make a mistake. How do you get past that mistake and not let it get that adrenaline going to the point where you get it? Yeah.
Yeah, and that happens a lot on game shows when you answer a question wrong or you make some kind of mistake too. And my advice to myself in those situations is to stay in the present. The mistake is behind me. The mistake is made. There's nothing I can do about it now. Don't dwell on the mistake. And I know that's hard. I know that's really hard, especially because you want to do a good job. You're a very thoughtful, careful performer. But in the moment, move past it and just say, we'll deal with that mistake later. We'll learn from that mistake later because it's going to help us for our next performance. But right now, in this performance, the mistake is behind me. I'm moving on. Don't let it derail you. Just let it be behind you and deal with it afterwards as best you can. But I appreciate that that's very difficult. It happens to us all, and if there's any comfort to be taken in the fact that it happens to us all, please do so. Thank you, Carol. Judy.
Hi, Heather, thank you so much for yet another fantastic presentation. I just was going to add just a little bit to the breathing and the holding of the breath. And again, I'm not an expert at this by any means, but I've read a lot about it. And one of the things I understand is that one of the physiological results from holding the breath while you're going through the focused breathing is that it slows your heartbeat down. So if you're getting into that panic state where your heart's pounding and you just feel like you're going to lose it, going right into that kind of focused breathing helps slow your heart rate down.
Yeah, thank you, Judy. So again, our body is trying to help, right? Our body is saying, uh-oh, it's go time. Let me give them the extra resources, the extra blood, the extra everything that they need to fight the llama or, whatever prehistoric challenge our ancestors faced. For us, the challenges, the performances are a little bit different. So we've got to tell our body, hey, get into line. And that focused breathing is one way to do that. Thank you, Judy. Michael.
Hi, Heather. What I was going to say is I'm really loving all this. This has been so helpful. You have no idea It's even inspired me to write things as well, but I'll go on that for another day. But what I was going to say is, we all know everyone's not supportive of our musical journey, whether it be friends or family. Now, what I would say is, so you said about stressful situations, is there any way that we could kind of bring them on board, like using these techniques to, you know, to kind of calm their fears or their dislike or whatever, you know, so that they kind of, you know, they encompass what we like as a group, you know, like we love, and that we could kind of, you know, continue to do without upsetting others, if you know what, do you know what I mean? Is there any way that we can kind of like somehow, where we prepare kind of thing, if in a sense, kind of de-stress them? Does that make sense?
That's a tall order, and certainly with these techniques, I want you all to primarily focus on yourselves, because remember that concept of the sphere of influence, which is what can you control? The things that you can control are inside your sphere of influence. The things that you cannot control are outside your sphere of influence. And it sounds like in this situation, if you've got people in your life or whatever that aren't behaving as you would like them to be, whatever the context is, musical or no, that might be outside your sphere of influence. And so one key thing I would encourage you to do is focus on the things that you can control. And that is how you respond both to your own preparations for the performance, but also how you respond to the support or lack of support that you get from others. And these techniques, I think, can work for everybody, or at least some of them hopefully can work for everybody. And, you know, encouraging other people to use those techniques to maybe get them to the place where you need them to be. But it's, I think, going to lead to frustration if you're trying to influence other people who don't want to be influenced positively. So really do focus on yourself and those things that are inside your sphere of influence.
Okay, that's great. Thanks very much, Heather.
You're welcome. Mike's got his hand raised.
Yeah, Michael raised something really important there. And during the situation, in our case, where this subject matter is really to do with performance and preparation thereof, if you can see a situation you might in fact be involved in, and you try to calm down the other person, now that is a double-edged sword, and actually it can go quite wrong, because remember, everybody's stressed in the same way that we were talking about, Heather was talking about. There are people who are introverts and people who are extroverts. People react in a way that can be unpredictable, and you can find yourself in a much worse situation. So, and this has happened to me for real. So I would absolutely say, focus on you first, you primarily, and get the heck out of everything else. Try and keep your own self safe.
Thank you, Mike. Roz has her hand raised. Roz?
Yes, I was thinking about this. I mean, I'm in a quartet, and definitely there are probably several things that we could do and that I would probably like to do. And it's the same even in the chorus. There are some people who chat away right up to the last minute. I like to do breathing. But I think one thing that you could do is part of warm-ups is bring some of these things in as part of the warm-ups on a normal practice, so that, you know, they just become part of the routine even. And so if you suggest doing them, people can sort of think of them still as part of getting ready to be on stage. So that, I mean, I had thought through exactly what Michael and Mike were saying, and I'd actually decided, no, the best way would be to use it as part of a practice. You know, you can't do something you can't change something at the last minute when you're waiting to perform. You have to do it at a different stage.
Yeah. Do a little bit of planning. Again, think back to Michael Phelps with visualization, right? He did it so often, it became so regular for him that it put him to sleep because it was so regular and relaxing. So if one of these techniques appeals to you in particular, make it a part of your life. Don't wait until it's performance time, or don't even wait until you know a performance is coming. Incorporate it into your day-to-day. Make it a part of your regular life so that it doesn't seem unnatural. It just becomes part of how you do. Okay? Thank you. Susan Talbot.
Mike's comment made me think of flying on an airplane when the flight attendant says, if you're traveling with small children, put your mask on first and then take care of someone else.
Yep. My goal is for each of you to be equipped with these tools. And if you're able to help others with the tools, great. But if not, I want you to be the best performers you all can be. Thank you, Susan. Anybody else? I'm looking for hands. No? All right. In which case, thank you all so much for coming to this session. I hope you found a gem of wisdom here or there. It was wonderful to see your faces, and you were very polite to pay attention to me, even if you found none of it interesting. So thank you so much. I hope to see you in a performance soon.